and the breaking news we're bringing you right now, a huge setback for OPS after the Supreme Court has affirmed the Madras High Court order which allows EPS to continue as the AIADMK interim general secretary, dismissing the challenge that had been put by OPS. Now the verdict is on a batch of cross petitions concerning amendments made to the party bylaws during the July 11th, 2022 General Council meeting. Palaniswami or EPS was elected as the AIADMK's interim General Secretary in the General Council meeting last year after the High Court had rejected a plea by Panneerselvam or OPS to stay the conduct of the General Council meeting. The court had then observed that it cannot interfere in the squabbles of a political party. The amendments made in the bylaws then had not only led to the appointment of Palaniswami as the party's interim general secretary, but also abolished the post of the party coordinator that was occupied by Panneerselvam. OPS Palaniswami had said that the election to the post of general secretary of the party would not be held till this tussle between him and OPS over the party's leadership was decided by the court, and today that has been decided. There you can see visuals of a wedding ceremony that EPS is attending this morning. So he's attending a wedding ceremony when he got the news of this victory in the Supreme Court, with the Supreme Court dismissing the plea by OPS. Let's just listen to what the lawyer had to say.
The application, the SLPs filed by Mr. Palaniswami stands allowed. The SLPs filed by Mr. Panneerselvam are dismissed. The High Court judgment of 2nd September is affirmed by the Supreme Court. So therefore, the meeting that was held on 11th July is held to be valid.
Right. So how do you look at the judgment, sir? Because of the tussle which has been going on for a very long time, how do you look at the judgment which has been given?
The judgment puts end to the one aspect of the litigation, that is namely whether the meeting of the General Council was validly called.
Well, joining us for more on this is Sunil Prabhu. And Sunil, so does this mean that the matter is finally at an end, that EPS is now in control of the AIADMK? OPS has lost, all avenues for any sort of, respite?
Well, not entirely. Partly, yes, because this is a setback for Mr. O. Panneerselvam, who had really questioned the General Council meeting of 11 July, as you heard the lawyer speak. But it's also been clarified by the court that this does not relate to the other interim orders of the High Court, which has a bearing in terms of the dispute between both Mr. O. Panneerselvam and E. Palaniswami on their continuous fight. So the High Court will continue to hear that matter. This is an interim setback for the O. Panneerselvam group, and the fact that he's been ousted, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the dispute in the High Court on this entire matter. But nevertheless, the fact is that for the AIADMK at present, Mr. E. Palaniswami has been recognized as by de facto by the General Council meeting that he is the General Secretary of the AIADMK at present. So that other dispute will continue between the two of them, which is being adjudicated in the High Court. But at present, at least one issue has been resolved at the General Council meeting that was held on 11th of July, which had reaffirmed Mr. E. Palaniswami, yet removed O. Panneerselvam. Those points are now accepted by the Supreme Court.
So the amendments that they'd made during that meeting to the bylaws of the party, so all those are upheld, and that had in a sense removed the position that OPS had held. And EPS has said that, the elections in the party for the General Secretary will only be held once this entire matter is resolved in the court. So you're saying that right now it still needs to be resolved fully before he goes ahead with that election?
Well, that is something that the High Court will have to hear, that matter, and that is being adjudicated. They will have to fight it out in the Madras High Court. And once that is reaffirmed, then only it will be taken forward. These are matters where they will have to read the entire judgment in its entirety. This was a petition that Mr. O. Panneerselvam had come to the Supreme Court with to really question the General Council's decisions. That has now been decided by the Supreme Court as valid, and it is definitely a huge setback for the O. Panneerselvam group.
All right, we're also joined by Sam Daniel. And Sam, we could see those visuals this morning. EPS was attending a wedding in the morning, but the big setback now to OPS with the Supreme Court decision.
That's right. As we speak now, both EPS and OPS are outside Chennai in their hometowns attending some weddings and local functions. But yes, it's a huge setback for OPS because he had a ray of hope that the Supreme Court will uphold his plea, his argument that for convening a General Council meeting, the signatures of both the coordinator and the joint coordinator would be required. But now the Supreme Court has upheld the Madras High Court order, which means it has upheld elevation of EPS as the party's interim General Secretary and also the expulsion of OPS. At the moment, it's a huge setback. We will have to see whether the team OPS will explore any other legal avenues to further challenge this in the Supreme Court, but that's something we'll have to wait for their official reaction. And at the moment, his doors appear to be shut. He can't even contest the race to become the party's General Secretary through the General Council whenever the elections are held, because he has been expelled, and it appears that the Supreme Court at the moment has also, by virtue of upholding the Madras High Court order, has upheld this expulsion as well. We'll have to wait for a formal reaction. But for EPS, it's certainly a huge shot in the arm. Particularly, this comes amid the Erode East Bipole campaign, which is traditionally an AIADMK bastion, and the fact that he chose to field an AIADMK candidate in a seat where another ally had contested last time now establishes, could actually establish him as a strong singular leader of the AIADMK. Whether the party would win in the by-election, that's something we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, through this bipole, by contesting this bipole, his party, his group has established that AIADMK is under a singular leadership of Edappadi Palaniswami. Giving a little background, Gargi, it all began after Jayalalitha died. Until then, the party had a singular leadership model called the General Secretary. But after that, there was a tussle between these two leaders. EPS was the Chief Minister at that point in time. They worked out a compromise and worked out a dual leadership model. And EPS continued to be the Chief Minister. OPS became his deputy in the government. The party was under the control of OPS, and EPS had become the number 2. After remaining in power with this model for 4 years, after the party lost elections, EPS's hands strengthened and he got himself elevated through the General Council, where he has overwhelming support, and that's how OPS was expelled. He became interim General Secretary, and now this order by the Supreme Court paves way for a formal election of Edappadi Palaniswami to become the party's General Secretary, unless there is somebody else contesting from the AIADMK. Gargi.
All right, Sam. So a big setback there to OPS, and all this had really, come into focus even more because of the by-elections, as you mentioned, Sam, which were to take place, which are going to be taking place on the 27th. And now EPS is free for, his candidate and signing the party symbol without needing any sort of nod or sign-off from OPS.
We have gone past that stage, Gargi, because Team EPS had moved the Supreme Court as well as the Election Commission, and they had worked out a temporary, a temporary system according to which they were able to field a unanimous candidate by sending circulars to all the General Council members to get their idea on who they would support, and that's how the party was able to field a singular candidate. And the person who has been fielded now, Tennappan, is a 2-time MLA of the AIADMK, and that was done following the due process given by the Supreme Court.